William Allingham is a native of this very town, Ballyshannon. He was born in 1824, just a short walk from here, down the Mall. His family have been in the town since Elizabethan times and have been involved in farming, tanneries, salt works, shipping and banking. William's father, also William, was a merchant. He imported timber, slates, coal and iron and owned ships that traded from the Mall Quay to foreign lands. Travelling from Ballyshannon was a rare event in those days. Dublin was a long and costly trip. England was a faraway land, and unfortunately many natives left the town, never to return again. No more unpleasant evenings we'll saunter down the Mall, when the trout is rising to the fly, the salmon to the fall. The boat comes straining on her net and heavily she creeps. Cast off, she feels the oars and to her berth she sweeps. Now fore and aft keep hauling and gathering up the clew, till a silver wave of salmon rolls in among the crew. Then they may sit with pipes alit and many a joke and yarn. Adieu to Ballyshannon and the winding banks of Earn. One of William's most influential memories is that of his childhood growing up by Assaroe Falls. The silver salmon shooting up the fall, itself at once the arrow and the bow. The shadow of the old quay's weedy wall, cast on the shining turbulence below. The water voice which ever seems to call, far off out of my childhood's long ago. The gentle washing of the harbour wave, be these sights and sounds around my grave. William was the eldest son of 5 children. His siblings were Catherine, John, Jane and Edward. His mother passed away when he was just 9 years old. He had a keen ear for music, and his interest in literature was encouraged by his aunt Mary Ann and his father William, the manager of the provincial bank. Following a year in boarding school in Killashandra, County Cavan, young William followed his father's footsteps and began working in the bank. He etched a rhyming couplet on the bank's window, which is still visible today over 170 years later. This name's duration shall surpass the hand that wrote it on the glass. William was never cut out to work in the bank, and in 1846, at age 22, he had a very welcome career change. He relished his new role as principal coast officer with the customs. He checked incoming and outgoing vessels. A new lease of life encapsulated the young man's heart and fed his creative soul. The open air was fresh in his lungs, the buzz and natter of the fair day, the banter of the local characters, the rhythm of the balladeers, each experience stored for retrieval in the developing literary mind of this budding poet. He knew his town well, dandering happily down the Abbey, around the Mall, and up along the river to Stonewall and Camlin. He was inspired by the town he so obviously loved. To further feed his thirst for literature, he travelled to London and rubbed shoulders with fellow writers Hunt, Rossetti, Browning, Carlyle and Tennyson. His first book of poetry, titled simply Poems, was published in 1850. The Fairies and the Goblin Child of Ballyshannon were unleashed on the literary world. William moved to the customs in London. While there, his poem Lawrence Bloomfield in Ireland was published. Even Gladstone quoted William's poem in the House of Commons, and William was awarded a civil list pension of £60 for his poetic writing. The editor of Household Words, Charles Dickens, too was a fan. He said of William's poem George Levison that it was mournfully true and moved him very much. William was beginning to find his way, and his poetry was starting to gain recognition. He left the customs and became sub-editor of Fraser's magazine in London. A significant influence was about to enter his life. Helen Patterson was another creative soul, a talented illustrator and watercolour artist. She was forging her own creative path and was commissioned to illustrate Thomas Hardy's Far From the Madding Crowd. Hardy was smitten with Helen, and he was not shy in letting her know his true feelings for her. He even wrote a poem to her entitled The Opportunity, suggesting a possible marriage, but Helen had found her true love already and happily married William from Ballyshannon in 1874. He was 50 years of age and Helen was 25 when they walked down the aisle, a union that would inspire both their works in the coming years. This was to prove a good year for Helen and William. He was offered the editorship of Fraser's magazine with a decent salary. Helen's career as an artist blossomed, and her paintings The Milkmaid and Wait For Me were accepted by the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition. She became an associate of the Royal Watercolour Society, a rare honour for a woman at the time. Their children were Gerard, Evie and Henry. William was happy and published regularly during this period of his life. They worked together on two works in particular, Rhymes for the Young Folks and a play, Ashby Manor. William's sister Catherine kept him up to speed with events back in home ground. The Allingham family had been busy. His brother John was living in Waterford, where he became mayor. His father remarried, and Edward, Hugh and Lizzie were born, forming a second family. Edward, William's half-brother, was a doctor, but also had poetic blood running through his veins. He published a volume entitled New and Original Poems. Hugh, not to be outdone, wrote a history of Ballyshannon and also kept with family tradition and became the manager of the bank. The final move for William, Helen and the children was to Eldon Road in Hampstead in 1888. William's health was not good, and he did not survive a year in their new home. On his final days, he was asked if he had any request. "No, my mind is at rest." Then to Helen he said, "And so, to where I wait, come gently on." On the morning of his death, he said, "I am seeing things that you know nothing of." William passed away peacefully on the 18th of November, 1889. Cremated in Woking, William's ashes were then interred at St Anne's Church on Mullinashee at the top of Main Street in his native Ballyshannon. William requested that there would be no funeral service, and it was 2 years before Helen brought the children to visit their father's grave and to meet their Irish relations. Helen painted whilst on her trip to her husband's hometown and was later to exhibit 13 paintings from her time in Ballyshannon. Even in death, they influenced each other's artistic journeys. Helen's career continued to prosper and has gained in popularity even more so in the past 30 years. Helen passed away in 1926. She knew the value of published work, and to ensure William's place in history, she had her husband's work published further. That's a brief insight into the life of the man and his endearing love for both Helen and Ballyshannon. So what about this town? Has Ballyshannon remembered one of their own sons? Well, in 1968, a young group formed the William Allingham Association to promote the poet. They even attempted to clean the ivy from the walls of Abbey Centre, but had to abandon the project as the ivy was supporting the walls. Grey, grey is Abbey Centre by Ballyshannon town. It has neither door nor window, the walls are broken down. The carven stones lie scattered in briar and nettle bed. The only feet are those that come at burial of the dead. A little rocky rivulet runs murmuring to the tide, singing a song of ancient days in sorrow, not in pride. The boar tree and the lightsome ash across the portal grow, and heaven itself is now the roof of Abbey Centre. There is a bronze bust of William at the Provincial Bank, now the Allied Irish Bank. The Allingham Society was formed in 1978. They successfully cemented his memory by founding a literary festival with poetry competitions for all, which is now an annual event attracting lovers of literature from across the globe. In 2007, the Fair Green was named Allingham Park. The Abbey Centre exhibition area has been named the Helen Allingham Gallery. Allingham Avenue is just past his old stomping ground at the Mall Quay. The plaque in the bridge erected by the townspeople in 1895 is in memory of the Bard of Ballyshannon and recalls his early life in the town. The verse on the plaque was written by Allingham, who wished to be remembered beside the river he so loved. Here once he roved a happy boy along the winding banks of Erin, and now please God with finer joy, a fairer world his eyes discern. St Anne's is a fitting resting place for a man that loved the town. The views of Ballyshannon and the hill of Mullinashee inspired Allingham. Mullinashee translates as the Hill of the Fairies, and the poem, The Fairies, is his most popular poem. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. Wee folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap and white owl's feather.